This BizNews production is brought to you by Brenthurst Wealth. Building wealth and protecting legacies since 2004. Invest better with Brenthurst.
Some uncomfortable truths. I remember one of our speakers here a couple of years ago, Christa Visa, a entrepreneur of great renown, described the different types of truths. And there's the truth that you tell easily. There's the truth that you don't tell as easily, but it's a bit uncomfortable. And then there's the truth that you never utter, the uber truth. And you've actually dropped some uber truths there. But I can imagine that there are people kind of squirming a little bit and thinking, really, do we have to go there? Is it necessary? Things aren't that bad. How do you react to that?
Things are bad in South Africa. They are not a complete disaster everywhere. We're having a wonderful conference in a wonderful place. And all of us plan to be here for generations to come. But there are serious threats. And the earlier speakers today, only have to mention Mozilla explaining the deep risks of infrastructure collapse in Johannesburg. Those risks are not isolated there. And then we have stagnant growth, which, if we continue on this trend, will lead to a reverse. We'll end up in a reverse of growth. So I think, Alec, no, we do have serious problems in the economy's ability to solve and produce and support a flourishing society. I've also chosen words today that is the most direct explanation, the most direct description of the policies that we lament, that I lamented here, the policies of transformationism. And I have myself, for a long time, avoided using such direct language. But I think it has become time to do so, because the trajectory of BEE is escalating here. I've seen recordings and transcripts of government meetings. I've seen draft policy documents. Ladies and gentlemen, what I have said about the doubling down is actually happening. And then there's another reason why it is becoming important to speak about this more directly. A new young generation is growing up, generally white children, but also other minorities, and they are hearing their parents explaining or mentioning BE, mentioning employment equity, mentioning not being appointed to a job somewhere, mentioning having to do a transaction in such or such a way, or not getting a merger acquisition, or not being admitted to sports teams because of their race, and because of a quota system, because of this ideology of reflecting in every aspect of society the racial composition of the country as a whole. We have to figure out a language that will resonate with that group as more honest and not deceiving them about what is really going on. And in doing so, of course, there is a possibility this will lead to more tension, because if someone is doing something harmful and you tell them that they're doing something harmful and you become more and more explicit about that, it becomes a difficult conversation. But this difficult conversation needs to be had because the runway isn't that long anymore.
What do you think about Helen Zille's efforts then to get elected into Johannesburg? Is she wasting her time?
No, I think, I think I even said it, Alec, I think people who use other avenues for change, the political avenues, should do all the best they can. But they're facing an uphill battle. And there is no inherent guarantee in the democratic system itself that the outcomes will be good. And this is not because South Africa isn't doing so well, and like that MEC of Northwest said, voting keeps delivering the same results. This is even an ANC member who said it. We've seen this all across the world. It's not a unique challenge to South Africa. So I think a two-pronged strategy is very wise, very apt. Maybe there are even other avenues for change. But I encourage people who who take up the baton of political office to do the best they can. And Alec, let me say one more thing on that. Politics has gotten a bad name over the years, not only in South Africa, but across the world. But it's actually a very honorable profession. People, let me not mention names, but there are such people in the room here who have dedicated a lot of their life to conceiving what the common good is and convincing people and exercising power and judgment, even against the odds, to achieve something called the common good. Politicians, in their best understanding, is stewards of the common good. And so I wish them well, but it's not going to be enough. If we want to help them, one way to help them is voting, one way to help them is funding, but another way to help them is altering the balance of forces in society, not only within the state apparatus, but outside. A healthy society is one with many centers of power, not one where the central state can overpower everyone else.
That's crazy. We've got this kind of personality-driven philosophy still. Many politicians that we know who are in positions of great power are not necessarily the smartest people. That's not fair. They haven't progressed along their path towards enlightenment, be it in economics, be it in race relations, whatever the case might be. And when they do get to that point, it's like, hey, neoliberalism isn't such a bad thing after all, as Enoch Godongwana said after the budget this year. But within the political process, and I don't want to kind of overburden this, but in Argentina, they've got a guy there called Javier Milei, who has transformed that country. And we know, and certainly when he came in, there was a lot of skepticism around him. Is that not the ultimate conclusion of politics? Is it not that eventually people are smart enough, or they look at AI enough, to be able to make different decisions in the political process?
Well, I think is the exception, and perhaps the exception proves the rule, that democracy doesn't always by itself serves as a sufficient mechanism for good things to happen. And besides, they've gone through lots of pains for many decades before Javier Milei took the position he has now, and he even has a challenge to unwind, and so much of what needs to be done probably still lies ahead. So let's take that case. Would it have been good if there were strong, independent institutions in that country that stabilized or checked government power from outside through its influence, through its authority, through its ability to direct capital or coordinate decisions outside the state? I think that I don't know enough about Argentina. I would suspect that there were some, and to the extent that there were some, if there were more, I'm sure that would have been beneficial. So I have no objection to good political outcomes. I just don't think South Africa, I think if we want good political outcomes, let's help by strengthening also the sectors outside the state.
I get the sense from many of the people I talk to that South Africa is a country of lost opportunity. It's got this massive potential, but we get on okay. We kind of bumble along. And if that's the case, you can live with it. The picture you're painting is that bumbling along is not going to be sustainable.
Yes, I mean, but even if it's just bumbling along, are we going to accept that? I think the risk is worse than just bumbling along. The kind of policies that we see being conceived of right now, the kind of policies that Sakeliga is fighting through litigation right now, which we have success, that's a good sign. But they are existential. If aviation licenses are tied to BE requirements, as they were through the course of last year, both for international airlines and domestic airlines, that was being rolled out. We stopped that through a court process. That's very harmful. If we tie being a financial service provider to a BEE compliance, that your company somehow has to be certain percentage of black owned, or that you need a certain percentage of black staff, or that you need to pay a certain sum into the transformation fund. If we allow, and this is the precipice at which we are, we are at risk of letting a government roll out BEE as an entry requirement for economic activity. That is the program. It has wrecked mining. Some of our speakers this morning pointed that out to us. Mining and petroleum and fisheries, and there were one or two others in the late 1990s and early 2000s that got licensing directly tied to BEE, typically these natural resource kind of permissions. What's happening now is that those isolated cases are being, the application to those isolated cases are being broadened to basically every section of society. Alec, I don't think it's going to succeed. We are going to fight that. But I think we must understand what the attempt is, and we must prevent that attempt from being successful.
Yeah, it's actually very funny. Not funny, but quite tragic. You mentioned oil, and we had James Lamont at one of these conferences. James is a guy who runs the Democratic Alliance's mining portfolio, has done it for many years. And he took a particular interest in oil and gas. And he points to a very interesting picture on the map of Southern Africa. The hottest gas province in the world is Namibia. And Namibia has gas rigs, or oil rigs, if you like, all the way down to the Orange River. And below the Orange River is South Africa. There's not a single rig, but it's exactly the same geography. So that's why I was saying it's lost opportunity. If you can get rid of these people who have misguided ideas, then the potential for this country is just ginormous. But it's almost like people here say, well, lost opportunity. Let's just have the power on, please. Let's just try and get the water sorted out. It's such basic stuff. But what you're talking about is, hang on, that easygoing lifestyle that you've got now might not be with us indefinitely. And in fact, is it a place where your grandchildren might stay here? So we need to reverse it. That's what I'm hearing from you. So how does one begin to reverse that whole process? Because clearly it's not going to happen overnight.
Alec, I think there are probably multiple ways. The advice that we have is the concept of state-proofing. State-proofing your business and state-proofing the public sphere. Done through the political process, if that's what you ask me, I think that quite possibly there will be marked improvements in the political governance in some parts of South Africa. I think there's a realistic chance of that happening. That's going to be good. But even where that happens, there will be great challenges in changing the staff and the structures and the vested interests that have produced the collapse in those areas. So to me, it's a combination of state-proofing, non-state activity, and then supporting politicians where they do good. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I would think what you're saying is state-proofing is a little bit like an insurance policy. But geez, don't give up hope. We've got a government of national unity. We've got a rand which is stronger. We've got a stock market that's done well. We've got an economy 1.6%. It doesn't sound like much, but it's the first time in a decade that we've grown at the same pace as the population growth rate. I mean, how crazy is that? You see where I'm going with this? It's to say, come on, we don't all want to go here and slit our wrists and not come back tomorrow. I would like people to come back and say, okay, I get you, Piet. I'm going to do what you tell me. I'm going to look after myself. I'm going to put that solar panel on my roof. But there's got to be more. There's got to be a brighter future to even think about persevering, because life is difficult, as Scott Peck said.
Yeah, I think we have a very good chance. Maybe it sounds like I didn't. It sounds like I may not have emphasized the optimism enough maybe because I wanted to stress the danger. But I think we have a chance. That's why Sakeliga exists. I think many businesses will make great money, even during tough times ahead. I think there are, it's not a question of think empirically, there are important changes in voting patterns. Taken together, I think we have a chance. But we must understand the nature of the bad wave of policy that is coming. We must be confronted forthrightly. And so, Alec, I think that there is a very sustainable future we can have in this country. It can go much better than it is going. It will just require something more than voting. It will require perhaps the most concerted effort ever from businesses in supporting and building and coordinating their decisions, their resources, and their support to check state power from outside the state and to complement whatever successes politicians have from inside the state, in local municipalities, in cities, in provinces, and at the national level.
I like very much where you're coming from and the message that you've given us, because it reinforces something Frans Cronje said. He said in the socialist psychology, and that's where the people who've run this country for a long time have come from, you push the bayonet in until you hit steel or bone or whatever. And what you're doing is you're saying, you're not going to push that bayonet in anymore. We're going to meet you with steel. Am I interpreting it correctly?
Let's push back. Let's push back like never before. And let's win at it. Even though it's difficult to discuss, let's develop alternative language and alternative visions for a future in which all communities in this country can flourish. That vision of a flourishing future is incompatible with the policy direction currently of accelerating transformationism. We are at an important junction, and we must be successful at preventing the further rollout of transformationism.
Yeah, I guess, and it comes back to that bumbling thing. You know, we live our lives, and we don't live with what you live with on a daily basis. Jeanette says to me, geez, how do you go to sleep at night when you've got all this garbage that gets thrown over your head, which you are exposed to because of the work that I do? And I dissociate from it. From your perspective, I'm sure you dissociate from it. Most people dissociate from it all the time, but that's what you do for a living. So I get that. I get the steel, and I think many people are grateful. They don't know it. They don't know why they should be grateful to you, but maybe before we take questions, just tell us your story about expropriation without compensation, what you've done there, the success that you've achieved so far, and what might have happened if you hadn't moved in.
Are you referring to the Driefontein matter?
I am.
So our role was, I think, important, but ultimately a minor role compared to what the owners of the Driefontein property in Ekurhuleni played. There's a property in Ekurhuleni. It's in this city area of, I think it's Boksburg, and the city took a decision about 7-8 years ago. It's minuted this way, to expropriate without compensation as a test case. And the property owner, of course, resisted and insisted on compensation. And then, but as good businesses do, tried not to raise this to the level of public attention. That's something an entity like Sakeliga can do. We're pretty happy to be the lightning rod and speak some unspeakable truths, although it's become speakable now, contrary to 5 or 10 years ago. But in the case of Boksburg, of that property in Ekurhuleni, the city council did expropriate it, and it's been an 8-year fight for the former owner to get compensation. Since we had raised that to the level of public and international attention, the city did an about turn. They realized, and they've actually been advised, that they will get an unfavorable court decision because the expropriation happened under the old Expropriation Act. And so their plan now is to reverse that somehow and then use the new Expropriation Act, once that is in operation, to do the same. So unfortunately, as much as the courts currently sometimes do deliver good judgments and victories, as we can attest to at Saakliga, in this case, the court process and this actually unconscionable legal tactic that the municipality is taking means that that process is likely going to be tied up in court for several more years, because the municipality has now taken itself to court. It says they want to review their decision to expropriate. They want that nullified, and then the former owner will just get the property back without compensation. And while it's been undermined, there are sinkholes, illegal settlements, it's politically toxic, you can never develop there again. So that fight's going, and we'll support the owners if they need us, but they are a proper operation, and I think they will persevere, which I think is very good. They could also say, we don't want the attention, we just want to keep it quiet, let's step away, but they're sticking to it, their guns, which is good.
You got to wonder what a man from Mars would say about all of this, that we the people pay these guys in municipalities, and they decide to sue themselves, to use our money, to go and faff around, and 8-year court cases. You've got to thank people like you, people like Michael Louis earlier, people like Wayne Duvenage, the NGOs in this country, the work they do, the perseverance these people have. 8 years in a court case, and that's standard practice. But without that, heaven knows. Right, so we're moving on now to some questions, starting off with Chris Kotze, who says, off-ramping doubles up on cost given wasteful tax expenditures. How do South Africans incorporated compete globally with this additional cost burden?
Yeah, it's terrible. You're paying twice. But it's amazing that for so long, so many people have been paying twice, and look at how successful so many of you are, and so many of your friends and colleagues are. This must be an amazing talent pool in this country. You're able to pay twice for the state services and your own, and you're still profitable and doing great. So firstly, congratulations on that. The first way to win is to be just even better. The second way to deal with it is, well, I don't know if it's the way to deal with it, because it's actually something that's happening on the state side. So at Saakliga, some of our involvement sometimes is with local municipalities. And what's happening in some of these municipalities is they've lost the ability to keep municipal accounts. They cannot send you a bill for the water, the electricity, the sewage, the refuse removal, and so on. So, you know, sometimes people speak about a tax revolt, but in this case, it's impossible to have a tax revolt because you're not getting a statement. So I don't know if that's something to look forward to, but actually some businesses in South Africa are dealing with it, that opportunity, shall we say. But of course, businesses actually want to pay, because you can't have a public sphere. Some common infrastructure needs to be paid and supported. The CEO from Eskom has a real problem. These municipalities they're collecting money, in many cases, most cases still, they're collecting electricity money and they're not paying it over to Eskom. And so if we allow that chain of collecting money, but then siphoning it off somewhere, never reinvesting in infrastructure maintenance and supplementation, we will face some kind of other collapse, which they are doing their best to avert, and all strength to them. So for now, be as good as you can. And number two, raise any disputes you can when you receive bills, or what do you call these statements. When you disagree with the statement, there are good processes you can follow. If you have a sufficiently large business, get an attorney or a lawyer, or maybe help your Chamber of Commerce to set you up with a system where they can help all the members to raise municipal disputes so you don't pay more than you absolutely need to. And then eventually, this is, I think, a little bit down the line. There does not exist laws for this currently in South Africa. Laws for taking money that was supposed to go into the municipality and actually redirecting that into infrastructure maintenance or service delivery outside of the municipality. I suspect that the next few years will deliver some jurisprudence in that regard. I don't expect to see legislation that enables this, but I do think that there is a path through litigation to open channels for more independent administration of collective public funds. So those are 3 remarks.
It sounds to me like just being a good citizen. Be a good citizen. Know your rights, but being a good citizen actually stretches a lot further. It means giving a damn. I was at a dinner a little while ago, and this guy opposite me, very wealthy guy, said, we were talking about something to do with a visa that was required. And he said, I've got a guy at Home Affairs his name is Lucky, in Pretoria, no problem, 1,000 Rand, you can get yourself a new passport. And I said to him, how do you know that? No, well, I had a problem with my niece, and my niece needed to come out. She's actually based in Switzerland, but she does have right to South Africa. And for 1,000 Rand, I got the passport organized through Lucky. He did not know, when I said to him, you don't think there's just something wrong with all of this? It's become part of the system. It's become endemic in us. Hey, if I can get through the system by paying 1,000 Rand, I'm not doing anything wrong. He said, no, I'm helping this guy. This guy's he's efficient. He's deserves to get that money. And what you're talking about is often people don't give a damn. They just go along with the flow, as I was trying to say earlier with the bumbling. And maybe it's starting to be more disciplined, starting to understand more as citizens. And perhaps being thoughtful patriots means exactly that. Stop paying the $50 so that you can get to where you want to get a little bit quicker. Surely that's the message.
Like I can only emphasize that let's be good citizens. Let's be good citizens in our community and for our neighboring communities, for our friends, for our businesses, and the larger society in which we are. I can only echo your words.
You know, it's 4 years ago that Rob Hersov stood up at the Champagne Resort and spoke out. And here's a question that from Johannes Wessels, which I think will be music to Rob's ears, but probably not. Does Sakeliga see any willingness or awareness among the big 100 companies or business for South Africa that it is time to confront government policies, or are they still happy to, as he puts it, bend the knee and be praise singers?
Well, obviously, Sakeliga has a different strategy to BUSA. And we've chosen that strategy because we think that is the path to a sound, flourishing constitutional order. And we think that we need to build authority and influence outside the state. BUSA's strategy is actually the more common strategy, followed by many business organizations around the world. It is to build relations. It is to invest in a close relationship of trust and try and convince the politician on the other side about what to do next, and even offering help and so on. I think that's a hard strategy to be successful with in the larger scheme of things in South Africa. But it has not achieved nothing. My understanding is that some of the port infrastructure improvements we're seeing, for example, is some of the work that BUSA has done. So I'll acknowledge. Let me acknowledge that our strategies differ. I was encouraged end of last year to, I think, hear that BUSA is also going to challenge the Employment Equity Act in court. More challenges is always good. Niasa and Sakeliga are already challenging them, some others as well. It's good that BUSA is already also doing this. I think we're seeing some good pushback at the NHI level. But Johannes, thank you for your question. Obviously, there are differences. I wish BUSA all the best with their strategy, and every improvement is to be welcomed. Naturally, Sakeliga has chosen this strategy because we think it's the best bang for buck under the current circumstances.
Martin's question is, can one state-proof your private life?
No, there are certainly degrees to it, but I don't think there's anybody in South Africa who hasn't. Well, no, there are people really exposed to the harms of state failure and pernicious state action, but certainly in this room, I think state proofing is maybe it's not even a new term, I suppose. I even recently heard during a visit in another country someone speak about state proofing. So I think we're actually exporting a concept here. You don't find the word state proofing in the English dictionaries yet, but mark my words, it's going to be there. And it's going to be a homegrown export. We've enriched the world with that word. So, yeah. But the question was state proof. Yes, it is possible. It just doesn't scale very well. There is scale in building a business that help people state proof. Solar panels are a great example, or tar to fill potholes and so on. So you can build business around this at scale. But just remember that I encourage you to state proof your private life. It's just solving for private problems and not sufficient for a flourishing society. So we just need to do both.
Final question from Dirk van der Walt. Nice that you're here, Dirk, and the whole We Buy Cars team. Fine, guys, lovely to see you. Has the ANC government made good on their social contract with the broader community they serve since 1994, or have they failed that community with things like job creation and education standards?
When I was at the Black Business Council meeting 3 years ago, I ventured a suggestion on what Black economic empowerment in its best understanding could aim to achieve. I think that still holds. I think the best understanding is a flourishing, flourishing Black communities in South Africa. We want to see flourishing Black communities in South Africa. And in the best interpretation, that is the motive, or the idea, the intention behind BE. But I think that the so measured, coming back to Dirk's question, measured against that intention, the government over the last 30 years has not done very well, and bringing South Africa to the point where we are, 15 years of no growth and even declining, is certainly taking us further and further away from that. So I would say that even if we say that the government's singular intention is only the flourishment of Black communities, then it would still be a good thing to change the policy direction of this country. And so the question, the answer must be, it has failed, both for the Black communities of the country and all other minority communities. I think that I don't see signs of it moving away from the policies that have brought us to such a problem, notwithstanding successes over the years, especially in the early 90s and even into the 2000s. There was good economic growth, lots of expansion in per capita income, and so on. A lot of that had to do with just getting rid of all the bad and the restrictive policies of the previous government. But beyond that, if we say what has been delivered in recent years, I think the answer must be failure. And so state failure today is a common word in South Africa, and that is disappointing.
Piet, thank you.
This BizNews production is brought to you by Brenthurst Wealth, South Africa's leading boutique wealth manager, trusted to guide families for over 20 years. Invest better with Brenthurst.